Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Military Spouse to Millionaire. I'm back. For those of you who are new here or don't follow me, I just came home about 5 or 6 days ago from a 6-week trip, which was amazing. I'll tell you about it in a second because it does actually pertain to what we're going to be talking about today. So, let's just get right into it. I really think this episode is going to be pretty quick and to the point, maybe 20 to 25 minutes max, because I literally spent almost the whole trip fixating and obsessing about making this episode, like to the point where I almost, if I had had a travel portable microphone, I would have recorded it while I was away because it's just been boring into my brain. So today we are going to be talking to renters. I came for on-post housing in one of my last episodes, so only fair that we should, throw some shade at tenants. Now, that being said, I do want to give a very clear disclaimer that I understand that not everybody can buy a house or is in a position to buy a house. But that does not mean that we should become complacent and just resign ourselves to being renters forever. So hopefully some of the things that I bring up in this podcast will cause a little bit of a mental shift for you people out there who don't know if you can buy, who are just too scared to buy, you're just too comfortable, you just never thought about it. I understand that buying is not for everyone and that it's not one size fits all and that some people can't. But even if you can't now, I hope these words plant a seed and you take this with you, because even if you can't buy right now, doesn't mean that you can't buy in the future. And it doesn't mean that you should become complacent with just being an eternal tenant. So even if you can't buy now, listen to my words. Listen to what I have to say, because I think there are a lot of sterile terms in real estate. And I'm actually going to do a whole nother podcast on a very sterile term that gets used. I use it every day. Like every day I use this term, and that's credit. The term credit in real estate, not for this episode, for a different episode, but another really sterile term, or two terms that are really sterile: rent and landlord. I have a perfect example of this. So before we went on our trip, our property here in Hawaii, we have one currently. We're in the process of maybe buying another one. We'll see. I'm in very early negotiations, so fingers crossed. We have a property here. My last tenant moved out in July, so it was on the market for about a month before we got another tenant in there. During that time, I had a house hunter who was really on the fence. He was very risk averse. I think I talked about him and his family in my reasons people give me for not buying episode, but they were very transparent from the beginning that they were really looking at both options and very much on the fence, but they took the time to hear me out and let me give them all the spiel, the statistics, the numbers, the data, the examples I have of past clients and their success. Like, they at least let me present them with that. At the end of the day, they still decided that they were too scared to buy. That's all it came down to. And they readily admitted that. Like, we hear you, but we're just too scared. Okay, that's great. I said to them, hey, we've been looking in Eva. We've been looking at 2-bedroom places. You don't want to do a lot of renovating. I have a rental property that's within your budget, that is 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 2 parking, renovated, has storage, like all the things. And he's like, yeah, I'd love to see, like, do you have pictures? Do you have videos? Absolutely. I sent him all the stuff. And he was like, wow, it looks fantastic. And I said to him, okay, I'm even willing to rent it to you for $100 less than what I'm about to put it on the market for, because he's a client. And I was like, I'll hook you up. Because also, side note, it was renting for the last 2 years. It was renting for $3,000 a month. I raised the rent when I put it on the market to $3,100. Not because my expenses went up. Sometimes as a landlord, your expenses do change. If property taxes go up, if maintenance or association fees go up, if your insurance for whatever reason goes up, like occasionally as a landlord, as a property owner, my expenses go up. And then you bet your bottom dollar, whenever I can next, I'm going to raise your rent as a tenant. But you can also raise rents as a landlord, just simply if the market dictates that you can. Like if places are renting for more, you can rent your place for more. So I thought I could rent it for $100 more. I was right. I did end up renting it for $3,100. But when I was talking to this guy, even giving him the $100 discount, I was like, I want you to understand that, because I thought I would take one more shot at getting him to buy, because I'm always going to try to convince you to buy. I said, I just want you to be comfortable with the fact that you're about to give me $100,000. And literally you see him like startle back. And he was like, I don't want to give you $100,000. And I said, okay, I can do a rental search for you for properties that have rents between $28,000 and $3,000 a month. And I can send you what I find. And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. And I walked away from that interaction. I'm still mostly speechless. He was willing to spend the same amount of money renting, but he just didn't want to spend it giving it to me, because I wasn't some sort of man behind the curtain landlord. He was paying me rent, and I was someone that had spent a few weeks house hunting with him. Not that he like knew me. We weren't like friends by any stretch of the imagination, but I would say definitely an acquaintance. Like if I saw him in the PX or the commissary, him or his wife, like I would definitely stop and be like, hi guys, how are you? Like that level of involvement in my life for sure. But he didn't like the idea of giving me over $100,000. But he was okay with giving some random landlord $100,000. But you guys, it's the same damn money. Whether you're giving it to me or you're giving it to someone else, you're still paying for someone else's mortgage and someone else's lifestyle. Which leads me to my next point. When we were on this trip, we did so many things. We went to see our daughter graduate from Air Force basic training, which any parents out there who have kids who are leaving the house, whether they're going to college or joining the military or whatever they're going to do in life, it's a surreal, really crazy, amazing feeling to watch our daughter in uniform. Everybody who has watched this podcast knows, but if you're new to the podcast, my dad was Air Force. My grandfather was Army. Clayton's parents, both of them were Navy. Clayton was 22 years Army. We just are a military family at our core, raised military, lived military, retired military. To see our daughter in uniform and saluting and just doing all of those things is something that I will cherish seeing for the rest of my life. It was amazing. And that kicked off our trip, which was so cool. Texas is hot. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. It's not for me, but we did Texas. We went to Texas. We saw that. Then we went to Las Vegas for 4 days because Clayton's birthday is in August and we love going to Vegas. So we went to Vegas because we were on the mainland. Why not? We then went to Colorado. This is the important part. Well, part of the important part. We went to Colorado. We spent a week in Colorado. Shout out to Ben and Brittany for letting us stay at their beautiful home. While we were there, we did an audit on all of our rental properties. We talked to our property management team. We looked at some land that is next door to one of our duplexes because we thought about buying it, clearing it, building a fourplex on it, adding some additional parking. I don't think we're going to do that, but it's still being, hashed out. But we looked at it and we got estimates for clear. I mean, it has like a big tree. We'd have to get it removed, the stump removed. It's like raw land. It needs to be cleared. Foundation would need to be poured. Plumbing and electrical would need to be put in. It's an undertaking. So we looked at that. We talked to some people. The biggest, most important thing we did, though, was really this audit of our rental properties. So at the end of the day, all of our rental properties net us passively. And I want to be very clear here. When I say passively, I mean the renters in these properties pay our mortgage, our property taxes, and the maintenance or association fees. Mainland doesn't really have maintenance fees, but I did include our one rental property here in Hawaii in this audit. So passively, what we make after they pay all of those things for us, we make $2,967 a month, which is over the course of a year, $35,712. Just to put that in perspective for you, $35,000 paid for over half of the trip that we just took. So not only do my tenants pay for my appreciating asset, being the home that they live in, of mine, they give us so much money that we just paid for a 6-week trip to Texas, to Colorado, to Vegas. We stayed in LA for one night. We then took an 18-day cruise to Tokyo. And then we spent 5 days in Tokyo. Obviously, we used a lot of like airline miles. We used Amex points for the hotel. Like, we paid for the trip in a thrifty way in a lot of other ways. So I would say that $35,000 is probably like roughly half of what we spent when you talk about like food and shopping and just like, bullshit stuff you do while you're on vacation. But we've been planning this trip for about 13 months, and we have a rental account where our rents every month, the rents go into the account, the mortgages get paid out of the account, and largely, unless something catastrophic happens at one of our rentals and we need to cover like a new water heater or a new whatever, we don't touch that account, and money just builds up in there to the tune of about $35,000 a year. So I wanted to take a quick second to thank all of my renters, because you just paid for half of what was an amazing vacation. Now, the renters out there that are listening to this podcast, not to put too fine a point on it, I bet that doesn't feel very good. I bet it doesn't feel very good to sit back and realize, or have it brought to your attention, that you're not only paying for someone else's home, because that's a given, right? Like, everybody pretty much, I would say, like, has that realization. Sure, you're paying rent, which is just another word for someone else's mortgage. You're paying your rent, and that's like something that's just fine. But just know that whatever you're paying for your property could be substantially more than what your landlord's obligation financially is to that home, which then means you're not just paying their mortgage, you're paying for their lifestyle. If I wanted to, I could take this $2,900, $2,967, and I could use it any way I want. My tenants could pay my car payment for me every month. With $2,900 a month, I could pay my car payment, my electric bill, my water bill, and buy groceries. We're empty nesters now. It's just Clayton and I. I could pay for all of those things on someone else's dime. Someone else who is already paying for my appreciating asset and my car payment and my utilities and my grocery bill. You guys, if you're a renter, you could be paying for someone else's groceries. That's crazy. Or anything else. Clayton and I could go island hopping with that money. We could go on date night with that money. I could renovate another one of my rental properties with that money. I want that to sink in. I want renters out there to realize the reality of their situation. And again, if you can't buy a house yet, or you think you can, but you're just too scared to check, I'm not coming at you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad about being a renter if you have no other choice. But even if you have no other choice, I want these words to sink in, and I want them to hopefully motivate you to do whatever the hell you need to do to get out of that situation. Because whether you rent for a year or whether you rent for 10 years, it's never going to benefit you. Now let's circle back to my rental property here. It was on the market for a month. I did, in fact, rent it for $3,100 a month to a an Air Force captain is renting my property. We rent it for $3,200 a month, which totals in 1 year $37,200 for 1 year. If this person stays in my house for the 3 years that they're going to be stationed here, and they're Air Force, they might be here for 4 years, but let's just pretend they're here for 3 years. If they stay in my house for 3 years and I'm nice and don't raise my rent while they're living there and they keep paying $3,100, over 3 years, they're giving me $111,600. I'll take a minute to let that sink in and say it again. $111,600 is what right now an Air Force captain is paying me. My financial obligations to that home are just over $2,500 a month. So you want to round up, say $2,600 a month, which means passively from that one property, I'm making $500. What could you do out there listening, watching this? Just quickly, what would you do with an extra $500 a month? Could that pay your car payment? Could that buy you groceries? Could that cover your utility bills? Could that give a date night for you and your spouse? The possibilities are endless. This service member is giving me not only the money to pay down my investment, but is paying for any number of lifestyle items, or even if I just save it, or I could reinvest it. I could save up and buy another property. I could invest it in the stock market. At the end of the day, the point is they are giving me their tax-free housing allowance for me to use to benefit my life when they could have taken the time to get educated and probably bought a place and had a similar payment, but at the end of their time here sold that property. And even if they only made a tiny profit, like let's pretend they only made $5,000. Okay, making $5,000 is still better than giving away $111,000 with no chance of getting any of it back. They are going to get back probably most of their security deposit after they pay for cleaning, and that's going to be it. That's their money to begin with, because to move into my rental here in Hawaii, you have to put first month's rent and a security deposit equal to first month's rent. So they came out of pocket $6,400. 62, sorry, can't do quick math. $6,200 they came out of their pocket to move into my rental. You guys, that's damn near, if not slightly more than closing costs if they bought a house. And keep in mind, you're only paying closing costs on a house if I don't get you enough credit from the seller to cover that for you. Because right now in our market, that's still very much a thing. But I sidetracked myself. That's not the point. They gave me $6,400 to move into my place and are going to pay down my mortgage and give me $500 extra a month, at least for the next year, because that's their lease. I really can't overemphasize enough the mental shift that needs to happen around renting. Think about what you're doing. As military service members coming to Hawaii, I don't care if you're an single E1. I don't care if you are the lowest rank, new to the military, this is your first duty station, you don't have any dependents, you are going to get a minimum of $80,000 in tax-free BAH. Spend it better. Spend it investing in yourself. Do not give it to me as a landlord. I'm going to do bougie shit with it. I'm going to go on fun trips. I'm going to pay for my electric Mercedes vehicle parked in my driveway with your money. Think about what you're doing with that money. Think about how it's going to benefit you and your family and your long-term goals, or even your short-term goals. I am really thankful to all of my tenants each and every day for the lifestyle they help provide me. But you guys, it is not what I want for the military families that come into my orbit. If you're out there listening to this, if you're coming to the island soon, no matter your situation, if you are a renter or you think you're going to be a renter and you haven't taken the time to get educated and at least look at home buying as an option, without question, you are doing yourself a huge disservice because it is way more accessible and it's way more of a possibility than most people think. I would say half of every client that I help buy a house starts off telling me they can't buy, or they don't think they can buy, or they're scared to buy. Those are normal things, but those shouldn't be absolute reasons that you don't at least do the due diligence to get educated on all options. If it ends up not being for you and you have to rent, I do help with that. I set up people with rental searches. I have rental properties that I offer to people. I understand that not everybody can, but even if you can't, you should find out why you can't and then start actioning on those items so you can get yourself down the road to home ownership eventually. Okay, I'm calling it. I think it's about 25 minutes long. I told you it was going to be quick. I'm so glad to be home. If anyone has questions about Japan, it wasn't on my bucket list. I never wanted to go to Japan, but you guys, it was amazing. So I would love to talk to anybody we're so close. It's like a 6.5 hour flight. If you have Japan questions, hit me up. Like, follow, subscribe. I always say I'd be nothing without all of you guys. So glad to be home, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.